Hello, everyone. I'm extremely delighted to be in Melbourne, even if it's quite far from home, which is Brussels. I'm actually quite relieved that I will be speaking before you're going to take your meal and lunch on a Friday, because most of the time, after lunch on a Friday, you're possibly going to be dreaming not on the future of work, but the future of the weekend. Now, obviously, I'm quite amazed to see so many people. And again, I think the title is possibly the reason why: technology and the future of work. And again, it's an important topic, not because some people would say, well, you know what? I don't need work, I just need a salary. No, joking apart, some people would say, future of work is machine will be becoming smarter than we are. And if they are, maybe it starts to feel a bit like, are we going to still be that leading species, let alone the fact that maybe without work, we have no money, and whatever leisure is going to be there, there is no way to spend and do something with that leisure. Now, again, I speak a lot about the future of work, not because it's something I like to be speaking about, it's because it's actually maybe the hype of the moment. And again, last week I was in Estonia with most of the prime ministers of Europe. And again, there as well, a lot of the discussion centered around future of work. What will be the model of the future? And again, when we talk about the model of the future, in fact, a lot of people are going back into emotion and don't necessarily get the full facts right. I'm not pretending I've got the facts right, but at least McKinsey and the McKinsey Global Institute, we've been working for at least 2 years now in trying to get enough of fact base and really try to understand what will possibly happen. Again, I will not make prediction, because I'm quite sure whatever I'm going to be predicting, it's going to be wrong. I will provide you a bit of simulation, much more than anything else. But before that, let's go to 3 questions that I want to go for. One, is this real? We can all debate about the future of work and have nice lunch and nice dinner, but at the end of the day, why now? Is it real? Second question, even if it's real, 90% of jobs today are created by companies. So what is the other side of the coin? Is it something that really you should be caring about if you are in management? And 3, there is always a last question, which is, are you shooting yourself in the foot? Because if you invest in artificial intelligence tools and you start taking people jobs out, maybe, indeed, without any consumer, whatever successful you could be as an AI adopter, you might be without customers. So let's go to each of these questions one by one. Now, the very first thing is that we believe indeed that the AI spring is happening. And it's happening because of 3 simple factors. The very first one is that we've got a first revolution in the making, not yet finished, started 25 years ago, called the digitization. And with that, we got a lot of connectivity, finally data, which are digitized, that can interact, and we got tons of data. And that on itself creates the potential of the new spring of AI, because there were 2 waves of AI already in the 1950s and 1970s. And they went back to the winter. And the reason was very simple. It was based on logic. You were trying to program and create logics. Now, as we know, the more we create real-life problems or issues, the more complex it is to program these things. So logic never ended right. But with data, then data and algorithms of deep learning actually can try to figure out patterns of data and will give you a few new insights. So the first observation why AI is actually going to be the new spring is nothing to do with, obviously, the power of processing and the like. It's due to the fact that we have a first revolution, not yet finished, called digitization and data. And the computers and the algorithms can make sense of data. And that's what we call, in our own jargon, social science. You observe from data, you derive hypotheses, from there you possibly get something that you can do with. Now, again, this is possibly getting there, and as you can see, computer vision, language processing, and the like are new type of AI tools that are starting to be quite effective. But still, let's relax. It's not because it's technologically possible that it's economically feasible, let alone that even if it's economically feasible, that you're going to start to diffuse this technology and change the full work business processes attached to that. And indeed, today, if you look at the right-hand side of this slide, you come to the conclusion that, again, pretty much today, on a global setting, barely 2% of companies who interviews are actually investing in those technologies and actually using these technologies to change the business processes from the innovation perspective. And again, the 2%, you know them. Some of them are called Google. Some of them are called Amazon. And possibly they do it not because they are dominant, but because they realize that these technologies that they market is actually very contestable. Imagine that with AI, why will you still type to search something? You just have to talk directly to whatever device, let's call it a mobile, and that platform of search will be likely much more effective than just typing with your fingers. So that means the contestability of this market is coming from the AI. Now, going to the second point, we have enough of business cases now which can prove that AI is not only technically possible, but as I said, economically feasible because of the ROI attached to these technologies. Now, let's take two simple examples. And I take these ones because they are, possibly companies you know very well, like Netflix. So what's the business problem of Netflix? And why do we believe these technologies are actually solving with a much better ROI? So the business problem is very simple. Keep customer engaged and subscribe to the Netflix package. Where is the key challenge? You pretty much have 90 seconds for a user to grab the interest in the piece of content that you will put in front of him. Otherwise, he will churn. 90 seconds. That's why most of the time when you got a video on demand service, it's very clumsy, and most of the time, barely, even if you're a big movie fan, you will possibly watch 2 a month, but not 15 like on Netflix. And the point is that these guys develop their own self-algorithm of deep learning. And today, in fact, even on the long tail, i.e. all the back catalog of movies and series, in fact, 4 out of 5 is a piece of content which is recommended by an algorithm. 4 out of 5. Now, that ROI itself is basically close to 300%, simply because it's an anti-churn mechanism, and it basically creates the base of Netflix to grow. Now, that's about software. But what about machine? Because at the end of the day, software is something we don't know too much about. We don't see it. But what about these funky robots we see in most of the movies? These robotics guys. Well, here's the point. Think yourself about Amazon. Amazon has invested quite a lot in physical robotics. And the business problem in this case is very simple. Optimization of logistics. Logistics, actually, most of the time, if you're aware of the retail business, it's a very complex problem because you're going to have to invest a lot of real estate. It's quite expensive. And most of the time, you're going to have to handle many flows of people coming in and out. And on top of that, for Amazon, the point is that they have a value proposition. They not only have to make that process right, but the click to ship has to be as quick as possible. Most of the time, 60 minutes. Now, if you think about the Walmart today in the US, the click to ship, if people go online on the click to the ship, is pretty much still 2 days. So 60 minutes, guys. How do we do that? I've usually invested in Kiva and optimized all the processes. The surprising thing today, bottom line, is that they can do it, click to ship in 60 minutes. They can do it in robots working, in interworking with humans. And by the way, they can do it in twice smaller size of real estate. ROI, fantastic. Here's the pick as well. AI will work not only because of software and deep learning, but because in parallel to that, we have major advance in engineering as well in science of mobility, which means that the robots can actually behave like a human. Now, that means that it will happen. And we look at so many cases now, and when we work with clients, we always come to the same conclusion. Whether you take retail, whether you take electricity, whatever sectors we take, we come to the conclusion that the ROI of investing in these technologies is actually much better than the first wave of digital technologies. The reason is very simple. Yes, they will automate many tasks, and maybe they will kill a few jobs. But on top of that, they're extremely not only efficient, but very, very effective. And so this is the other side of the coin, which is that not only technology is there, but there is an incentive, an economic incentive for early adoption of these technologies. And so economics start to meet technology. Now, I will go directly with maybe the point you want to hear about. Are we going to be working with the machine, or are we be working against the machine? Now, again, this is a large debate. I don't have the full answer. And you can find a lot of reasons why the questions could be tilted against or for. Take my example. One day ago, I had to be close to 20 hours in a plane, in 2 planes indeed. 99% of that journey could have been done with automated pilots. Why do I have a pilot in my plane, by the way? Well, socially, you're still scared enough to say, look, if something bad happened, maybe machine learning will not help, and I possibly need that. So again, there are just a lot of cases where machine will be working with human. The question is that if the only case where it's going to be working is in the case of high uncertainty, yes, maybe a lot of you will be on the beach for the rest of your life. So what's the way to do it? Now, I have 3 crucial findings on our work. And again, these are not one study. It's tons of studies we have done. And we always come to 3 fundamental findings. And again, these findings are possibly to be a bit challenged, but they're also the aha moment for most of the people I've been talking with. The very first one is that, especially in countries like yours or mine, developed countries, AI is actually one of the most important sources of productivity growth going forward, and actually adding to the return of the digital technologies or digital transformation that you have made. It's actually quite big. And again, do you want a pie to grow, or do you want a pie not to grow? First question. Second question, yes, we are human. As humans, we are emotional. But let's get out of the emotion and let's look at the facts. In fact, if you look in the past, and if we do simulation and calibrate models, we find something very interesting, which is that at the end of the day, labor markets are actually quite resilient. They are quite resilient. Now, I know your argument. Your argument will be, markets always clear. But if it clears at a negative wage, maybe this is not an issue. No, I'm telling you, it's a resilient market, even if I continue to believe that the trajectory of real wage will continue. Point number 3, and that's the catch. It's not about no job. It's actually about different type of jobs. And in fact, you don't know what you don't know, so obviously we're afraid of the existing job being destroyed. But the point is that many types of new jobs will be created. But obviously, a job is a bundle of tasks. And those tasks are actually trying to match some capabilities. So the fundamental question is that what are skills that we need to have, and how quickly can we build these skills for the system to continue to work? And that's what I call a management problem. How do you manage the transition more than anything else? Now, why do I say that? First point is that when we talk about jobs, the first scary moment is that, oh, many jobs will be killed. In fact, because jobs are a bundle of tasks, in fact, in all the maths we do, by matching each of the technology to the capabilities, to the tasks, to the jobs, we come to the conclusion that, in fact, 40% of the time spent working can be automated, but only 1/3 of that will actually lead, like 10 to 12% of the population will be out of job. That means something else. The 28% of time equivalent, which not require a job to be killed, will require job redefinition. So first problem, do you, in your enterprise, have an HR person working with the manufacturing person or the marketing function person to make sure that we can redefine jobs in such a way that you can do it? Because if you don't do it, you will come with another problem, which is you cannot actually be efficient on these technologies. And actually, you're going to create more jobs because you cannot recreate a rebundle of tasks. Bear with me, it's a complex chart, but as I told you, I will not make prediction. So we have done simulation. And in the bubble in the middle, this is actually the full simulation of labor markets in Europe. And as I told you, the first thing to look at is, in the middle, is what is the GDP per capita growth that will happen? Is the pie going to be growing? And as I said, if you take efficient technologies and you invest in these technologies, you will be more productive. That productivity will translate in GDP growth per capita in the economy. And we believe that, at least in Europe, from 2016 to 2030, average scenarios, it's going to be close to 2%. Now, if you do that model versus the model where you all resist automation, we will be at 0.6, 0.7. So we got a 1 to 1.4 points of growth every year that will come out from this technology. Now, remember, when you have less than 1 point of growth not coming from technology, you got social turmoil. We got Brexit in Europe, or you got possibly a certain type of president in the US. Now, you can say, well, but Jacques, yes, but maybe the social interest will come from the low end of the market because these people will have no job. So let's look at the math, and that's the net employment impact. And here is the point. It's the half empty, half full glass. The half empty is that, yes, job will be replaced. In Europe, because of challenging trade activities and the fact that, yes, we happen to have great wages and wage increases, we are possibly competed away by China and possibly Asia-Pacific, job replacement, 16%. Now, 16% looks big, but 16% across pretty much 14 years. So it's 1% a year. Now, obviously, if you're not in the employment business, 1% is a lot of people. But how many jobs are created and destroyed every year? On average, between 15 to 20 a year. Obviously, people go from one firm and go to another firm because they think that where they work is not good and they want to go somewhere else. It's called talent. Some people are fired because they're not skilled, and you name it. So again, guys, it's a big number. But in the big scheme of things, it's not that large. But more important, this is not my point, is that, yes, technology killed jobs. Every technology for 150 years has done that. And the reason is very simple. It's a logical reason. You invest in technology because it's a business case. And there's a business case most of the time because you have to take something to do something different with it. But that means that all the jobs will be created. And that's the new digital jobs and the new non-digital jobs, plus 6%, plus 11%. Now, again, this is the average case, and you see that if you go to the left bottom, where there is not so much productivity and the like, yes, it could be different. I'm not saying that I'm right, but I'm saying that if you calibrate the model from the past and you look at what's specifically different with these technologies, there is a case for labor market to be resilient and still have an increase in wage as much as what you have in the past. So should we complain, is the question. Now, I'm not socialist. I just want to show these slides because, again, the power of analogy is usually weak, but the power of going back to the past and ask ourselves, how did it work? It's always important. And again, if you look at the bottom of these charts, CAD robots. The first robots, obviously, were very clumsy and were barely used in manufacturing. And as a Belgian, I live close to a very big country that you know very well. I'm quite sure it's called Germany. Germany has a lot of cars, isn't it? And they were the first to invest in those robots. Now, here's an interesting point. The day they invested in the robots, and that's what you see in the job loss attached to this robotics in the manufacturing sectors basically happened to be 1 million jobs worldwide being killed. Yeah, obviously, you don't need the same people to be, on the work, shop, to be doing the same work as before. But here's an interesting thing. Look at what happens afterwards. And I can tell you very easily what these jobs were and why they were created. So imagine that you are Mercedes, and you have to compete against, let's say, Honda. And you realize that Honda have a cost curve much lower than yours. Obviously, what do? Well, you have no choice. You're going to have to outsource some of the production to China to be competitive. So the first thing that happened is that without automation, you will have lost job anyway. So what happened if you invest in technology where the robots work 24 hours a day and 7 days a week? Well, actually, it can reshore. So what happened is that some activities got reshored. The second thing is that the robot is quite effective, but you know what? That robot needs to be maintained. That robot needs to interact with human, and maybe you need a lawyer to define the rules of the game, because if the robot starts to hit me, where is the law? Okay? So you start to see new job categories and effectiveness, let alone that obviously Germans are not only very efficient, but they're also smart. So the first thing they did, they start to invest not only in car manufacturing, but in consumer electronics so the car downstream. And they start to realize that if they want to trick the Chinese, we better make cars which are slightly as good as a Japanese car with a lot of electronics into that. And they started creating engineers and electronics engineers downstreams and bundle that with the new car. Finally, Mr. Mercedes or Mr. BMW, whoever they are, the shareholders and all these guys get productivity increase. That productivity increase came from the fact that you can also sell more cars, so there's more profit. And that profit one day has been reinvested in the economy. It's called a good meal in the restaurant the Friday evening. It could be great holidays, possibly in Australia, and possibly why not Melbourne. But the point I'm making is that you see the waterfall. So again, we're in a system dynamics, and employment needs to be worked out until the end. So am I saying I'm an optimist? I'm not saying that. I'm saying that at the end of the day, we should not be worried only about what is existing. It's a process of reinvention. And yes, indeed, the process of reinvention will be much more challenging than in the past because these technologies are pervasive and are actually going to be in every sector. Digitalization didn't happen that well in manufacturing yet. Robotic has. And what you see is that there is no way to hide. So the process, the systematic process will be stronger, which comes to my different future. It's very difficult slides to explain, but let's go back to the principle. The principle of jobs is you have capabilities. These capabilities link to a skill. That skill creates a job definition, and from there, you go. Now, we've done the same maths, and we say, look, at the end of the day, we've got a set of, I think, 200 skills in our database at very granular level. Then we aggregate them in a few ones, like management, like expertise, like actually collecting things like data, processing data, doing physical activities which are unpredictable. Think about teachers. They have physical activities with unpredictable outcome because kids are usually at boarding school, not something that you can really well manage. And obviously, you got the predictable physical activities. And that's what we call the Sloan Age. When Ford invented his car, obviously everything was normalized, standardized, and everybody had to work the same way. And we had all this fad of lean management and all these things where we have to do these things, right? Now, if you look at that, first observation, if you start to match these skills, you start to see, obviously, three important points. The very first one is that sectors are very clusters around these skills. If you are in manufacturing, transportation, trade, and the like, a lot of the process are more on the predictable, physical, not too much of good skill on collect data and the like. And so these sectors are likely to be much more challenged than the others. If you go at the extreme bottom, ICT or financial services, it's a lot of management and processing data. And again, there you will see what's substituted as well. So again, it's quite easy to predict the sectors. If they don't change, will be hurt by this evolution. But it boils down to the fundamental questions. What are the skills needed? And I will stop with these three implications. And maybe in the panel, we will engage a bit more about that. The very first one is we have no choice. Technology will go whether you like it or not. And everything that you do to resist automation will actually put you in a situation of weak position. So no pie growing. I prefer having a pie growing and a challenge of redistribution than a pie shrinking with social unrest. Point number two, yeah, but in that transition, you need skills like management, creativity, and everything which is based on the middle class, which is predictable, automated process skills. All that will disappear. And here's the problem. And that's why I talk a lot with governments, because governments are telling me an interesting point. If 40% of employment is actually middle class, and they will be as much challenged as the low class, which we've seen what happened with the blue collar, that means that the sum of the two are likely to be 60% of the people. And in democracy, 60% of the people can decide what they want. So is there still a place for actually great leadership in governments where in 2 years' time, democracy will say, I don't want you because you hurt me. So the point is that what is the leadership and the management transition that you need? And by the way, relax. It can happen, but this is the fundamental question. The risk of unemployment comes from mismanagement and from the management of social issues and transition. That's the key. And I come back to the last point. We cannot solve the problem without having a debate on society. It's about you as managers. It's about you as managers in terms of your social responsibility. It's about you as managers whether you want to basically go for this technology just for efficiency or for new product innovation that will create jobs. It's about you doing this because you want to export and get more money into Australia. It's about the social security system. It's about the education system that we have, because the education system today is also like in the Sloan Age. We start to go at school mandatorily at 7, possibly, and then we got a diploma, and then we think that our diploma is enough to live and free ride for 20, 30 years of work. Now, obviously, all that has to be challenged and rethought through. So this is a great opportunity for us, more than anything else. But it's a time of responsible opportunity, much more than anything else. Now, I cannot resist to give you a last very small story on how smart we are. And it's a real story. Assume that we all are the most clever people in economics and technology, and we are all young students in Japan, and we apply to the best school of technology and management in Japan. Pretty much, if I look at the people here, there will be possibly 5 times that of students trying to apply for the 20 position in the master in that school. And obviously, there are 2 tests. Test number 1 is how clever you are. So we'll ask a lot of technical questions in mathematics, in science, and you name it. And the machine is also competing. And, first test happens. Guess what? The machine happens to be in the top 20. Well, the machine has access to so much data, and it can actually be as good as you are. But there is a second test. The second test is writing an essay. Now, machine can get a lot of data, can possibly find patterns in some of the words and sense it, and from deep learning algorithms can start to write something. But machine has no creativity. It can only get output from input. The machine has no creativity. Well, machine has no choice. It has to pass the test, or at least to try to pass the test. And it does the exercise. Came out the results. The machine, I would ask you to raise your hand if you believe that. Do you think the machine came into the top 20 of the 1,000 students? Who can raise his hand? Not a lot. In fact, the machine came 17. That tells you an interesting thing. We are possibly in a world of smart people, or good filled brain. But even the best students in Japan cannot write an essay. They are not creative anymore. And so maybe when we talk about smart machine, we should think ourselves whether we are as smart as we believe we are. And maybe we are, but we have lost some of the edge that we have. Social interaction, creativity, all skills possibly tomorrow that finally we can use and rehumanize the way we work. Thank you.